Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to the channel. I'm Stylosa and this is the State of Overwatch 2, the final beta review. Let's do this. Hello guys and welcome to the channel. So we believe what we have just taken part in is the final beta for Overwatch 2. Now the reasons for this is the launch of the game is in October. It is October the 4th. They don't really have time to throw out another beta, and also they would probably cannibalize content that they actually want to add to the launch of the game. So I know a lot of people out there are hoping for things like a competitive beta, or maybe even another hero to look at, or maybe even another game mode, but that's not going to happen. I think they're going to keep that content for the launch of the game, because as we all know, the game needs content, especially around the launch date. So in this video, I'm going to break this down into a couple of different categories. We're going to talk about the state of tanks, we're going to talk about the state of DPS, we're going to talk about the state of push, we'll talk about the state of 5v5. Now, I was going to read from a script for this video because there was a lot of points that I wanted to make, but you know what, I've just thought bollocks to the script because let's go into detail, let's throw some thoughts around, let's just have a nice, good old-fashioned discussion about this because there's loads of stuff we can talk about here. So I think we start with supports, and this is a massive, massive topic throughout the entire community and player base of Overwatch. Now, for the first beta, supports were in trouble and they were dying very quickly. You had things like DPS had a passive that allowed them to move 10% faster. This meant that heroes like Genji, heroes like Tracer, were absolutely horrible to deal with in the back line if they were just going after your supports over and over and over again. It was very difficult to deal with them. Of course, there was the reduction of a tank, so there's only one tank. There's no longer a tank to peel for the supports. Now, this was kind of like, it was a combination of, yeah, the DPS passive being removed in the latest beta, because of course now DPS effectively take 30% of their ultimate charge points over to another hero, and of course ultimate charge points are different with every hero up to a maximum of 30%. So obviously if you charge a Tracer Pulse Bomb, it charges much quicker than a Death Blossom. You can't get 30% on your Pulse Bomb and then swap over to Reaper and have 30%. It doesn't equate to that because you need more ultimate points for the Reaper ult. Anyway, that's besides the point. There was one less tank to peel from you. So how did gameplay have to change? How did the Overwatch brain of supports need to change for Overwatch 2? Now, I made a video, and I said in this video, supports need help, the state of supports. But actually in that video, what I was going into detail on was talking about the way that the support playstyle needs a slight change. Instead of... expectation is a strong word, and it sounds quite entitled to go, well, I'm a support, I believe I should be looked after by the off tank, for example, like the Diva should peel for me, which would have happened in Overwatch 1. Obviously the Diva would be doing other stuff as well, and the enemy team have also got another tank who would be doing stuff as well. The big point I was trying to get across though with the supports is you need to be a bit more aware of your line of sight issues. So you don't want to be out in the open where you can be poked at by enemy DPS. Now, there is another caveat here. The support passive regenerates your health after, I think is it 1.5 seconds after not taking damage. This means that you can actually poke. If you play Ana, you can do a lot of like peeking because okay, provided it's not against a fully charged Sojourn, a Hanzo, or a Widow. You can poke and peek against basically anybody else in the DPS cast. So you can have a little look, you can try and do a bit of damage, get a bit of heals. If you get a hit, then you can just hide away and let your passive regen kick in. You don't actually have to nade yourself or run to your other support for help. You can, you know, so that's like, it augments your playstyle in that way. You can abuse the passive to actually give yourself more uptime. But the point I was getting at is no longer are you sort of in a ball with your team. You want to be aware of standing out in the open because you might take undue damage. You don't have a tank, an extra tank to help protect you. And given the way tanks generally play in Overwatch 2, is your tank is probably in the enemy team somewhere. It's not going to be with you. So what happens with supports is the support duo is, well, you need to look after each other. Now, this was always the case if you had a Lucio. And let's say a Lucio and an Ana. The Lucio would, or should, try and help Ana out with boops and stuff like that, unless he was a Reddit Lucio and he was in the enemy's back line. However, in Overwatch 2, this becomes even more powerful because if you are a, let's say, a Brig who is really strong, like really, really strong in Overwatch 2, and I don't think in an OP way, but she is really strong and really good to play. She can protect her other support really effectively. So if it isn't Ana, if it is a Batiste, or if it's somebody else with high healing output and not a lot of mobility, Brig synergizes superbly well with that. So there's a little bit of a playstyle change, right? And I don't think it's as bad as some people may have said. Now, there are some absolute brainlets out there who, for some reason, think that in 6v6, supports could just hide behind a shield and then just, like, heal bot their way to GM. That's never been the case. Nobody could ever just stand still behind shields and just try and and just pump heals out into a tank. That would never work. That's never been effective. So anyone saying that has completely lost the plot. But in Overwatch 2, if you have that kind of playstyle, it's just not going to work. Now, I don't mean that you're sitting behind barriers and you're just pumping healing. I mean, maybe you've got more of a, maybe a bit more tunnel vision. I think that's the way to look at it. So if you were heavily focused on keeping the tanks alive in Overwatch 1, when it comes to Overwatch 2, you need to be aware that there could be flankers, or you could just be exposed yourself and you could just take chip damage from range, and you've got to be really aware of that. This is why you need to take into consideration the map you're playing on. A lot of the new maps have got a ton of flanking passages all over the place. Midtown has got a hell of a lot. In fact, Midtown, they went crazy. There's so many flanks on Midtown, it beggars belief. So you've got to be aware of where things could be coming from. You can't just sit there. Again, I'll use Ana as the example, with your scope up, just pumping heals into the tank, hoping for the best, because that's probably not going to work. This does mean that support becomes, I think, what Overwatch 2 does, and I think what it does really, really well, and I think Mercy is a fantastic example for this. And I'm kind of sad, because I bet I don't have any footage to show of Mercy, because she is my least played support, simply because I just prefer the other supports. But I think Mercy really exemplifies this. It's the whole strategic overview, knowing what's going on, being in a position to see everything. Mercy is incredibly strong for that. Her high mobility with Guardian Angel lets her move around all over the place. Now, of course, with a new Guardian Angel super jump, she can actually, it's easier to pull that off than it was before. So you've got even more mobility. Then you've got the ping system. Well, Mercy's fantastic for pinging, because when she's flying around in the air, she's got this great view of everything that's going on. She can ping targets, ping threats. It is so strong. She is so good. But the reason I was using Mercy as an example is a lot of Mercy players already play like Overwatch 2, because they've had to play like Overwatch 2 in Overwatch 1, because they've been mobile. They've always been looking for where the next Guardian Angel target is, who needs healing, like what triage do I need to do, like who should I damage boost. There's all of these things, whereas the other supports are kind of a little bit more, can I say, like, well, Lucio is not one-dimensional, but when I say this, I don't mean one-dimensional, like they just do one thing. I mean they just basically, they're on the ground, right? Mercy's flying around in the air, so she's got more of an overview. But then that adds into more things for support to do in Overwatch 2. If you're more aware of what's going on around you, we always call this the Overwatch brain, but if you're more aware of the flow of the match, then you are just more effective in Overwatch 2. And one of the things they've tried to do with Overwatch 2, and honestly I think they've succeeded with this, is put more agency on each individual player. Now the big thing that gives you more agency is it is now 5v5. It is not 6v6. So there's one less player per team, which means each player has more of an impact, right? But also, this means the way they've designed this game is, I don't want to say it's more 1v1-y, but you can pop off more. If you're playing really well in your chosen role, it really shows, and it really has a big impact. Now, I will argue a little bit later on, if I remember, and if I don't, I'm going to say it right now, but tanks have a massive impact on this game right now. It is the most high-pressure role in the game, and if your tank is terrible, or your tank's getting countered, then you will just lose the game. And I think this could be something that further down the line, we could see a lot of friction with. But just to go back to supports and finish this section of the video, and my thoughts on this, I think, all in all, and I hate that phrase, I don't know why I've said it, but I just have, so deal with it. Supports are in a good place when it comes to Overwatch 2. The problem with supports is there is not enough supports in the game. Now, there are supports coming. We know there's going to be a support coming, possibly with who's a fox, ladies and gentlemen. And they've also committed to a couple of other supports coming further down the line after launch. So it's good news. More supports is good news. But I do think Blizzard have done an actually pretty good job. And I do think as well, just to maybe end this section on Mercy, I think the current version of Guardian Angel isn't actually that bad. I think it's fairly decent. And I don't think I've seen a lot of anger from the Mercy community, especially the high-tier Mercy players. I've seen some discussion around it, but I don't think I've seen anyone be overly negative. So there you go. I think supports are kind of okay. And now, actually, in fact, I know I said Mercy was going to be the last thing, but like I said, I've threw my script away for this video. Anti-nade probably does need looking at. And maybe Discord on Zen. Now, Zen has been nerfed recently in the beta. They reduced his health. Always combined shields and health pull down. But anti-nade is very, very oppressive, and it is very easy to land anti-nade. So if you're playing Ana and you throw a nade into the enemy team, and then your team push, it is very effective, unless they've got D.Va who eats it. And we've not been seeing a lot of D.Va getting played, or, you know, it bounces off a barrier or something. But yeah, it's maybe a little bit too easy to get value with that. But hey, that's something that can be looked at further down the line. But I think supports are in a pretty good position right now, and I think Blizzard have done a really, really good job. Let's talk about tanks. Now, I think we'll start with Junker Queen. Brand new tank, new hero. First time for literally 3 years. Yeah, it's got to be 3 years since we've had a brand new hero that we arguably didn't know anything about. Now, we knew Junker Queen was going to be a hero for a while. There was a bunch of leaks. Bits of her, I think her axe and her arms showed up in a very early Overwatch 2 video from a couple of years ago. I think it was from BlizzCon Online. So we knew she was coming. Obviously, her influence on Junkertown, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so how do I feel about this hero? Whoa, I don't think she's that good. So I think what Blizzard have done, and I think... Okay, let me rephrase this. When I say I don't think she's very good, I think that in terms of her meta potential, not in the way the character has been designed. So let me explain that. Blizzard have absolutely nailed a hero that feels amazing to play. And you can see this throughout a lot of their recent design decisions. If you look at the Moira mini rework with giving her necrotic orb or enfeebling orb, everyone gets hit with weakness. This is a skill shot, and it reduces damage output on targets it hits. But what this does is gives you something else to think about when you're playing Moira. So you're thinking about your big healing ball. You're thinking about your necrotic orb. You're thinking about your alternate fire to reduce your primary fire heal. You're thinking about when to use fade. You're thinking about when you should use coalescence. You're always doing something, and I really like that design. And Junker Queen, oh my god, she amplifies this to another level. She's got so many abilities, this hero, and you're always doing something with it. It feels awesome. But does she feel like a tank? Now, you may remember Blizzard were talking a while back about changing tanks to brawlers, renaming the entire class to brawlers, because that's kind of what they see them doing in Overwatch 2, which is what they are doing in Overwatch 2. And Junker Queen is an amazing example of a brawler, because if you rush into the enemy team, and you've not been anti-naded, by the way, if you get anti-naded with this hero, you're just dead. If the enemy are playing Ana, which they will be playing Ana, because Ana's really good, then you're just dead. You're just absolutely dead with this hero. But if they don't have Ana, then maybe you can do something. So if you rush into the enemy team, you're throwing your dagger, you're pulling it back through multiple targets, it's triggering the heal proc on yourself, because the damage over time effect it applies to enemies, gives you health through damage it does to them. It's like a life steal. You hit them with your massive axe swing, which does tons of damage, which also applies the bleed effect and gives you healing over time. It's so fantastic. This hero is really good. A shotgun, massively powerful when she's close range. It does tons of damage. Her ultimate, incredibly powerful, and I would argue the best part of her entire kit, because she just launches forward and anti-nades the entire enemy team if they're all together. And you can't stop this. Well, you can stop this if you put her to sleep, if you throw an Orisa Spear into it. And in fact, Orisa is another example of a rework to a hero that means you've just got more stuff to do. She's got a skill shot ability thrown into her, like, let's say, older kit. Obviously, she's got a brand new kit, a spear spin, and, you know, she's always doing something, which I think is really cool. Anyway, yeah, Junker Queen. Her ultimate's great. I mean, it does quite a bit of damage. It's actually really good for quickly repositioning. And when you Junker Queen ult through an enemy team and turn around, and then you're just in their back line, they're all anti-naded and your team follow up, it's really powerful. Like, almost all of the time, they will die unless they've got some way of preventing damage through either a bat lamp or, like I said, they've anti-naded the Junker Queen and killed her before she even used her ultimate. It can be quite difficult to actually identify her on the battlefield. It's like she's really, really tall. She's got this sort of like Amazonian physique. She's like 7 foot tall, but she's not that wide. So it's kind of hard to go, oh yeah, there's a tank. And sometimes you can be like, in the heat of battle, you're like, what am I shooting at? Oh god, that's a Junker Queen. And you don't kind of realize. So I think it might be better actually if she was more bulkier. Like make her more muscly, although she's muscly as hell anyway, so I don't know. So maybe that'll be just something we get used to as time goes on. Or just because we're starting to get a decent number of heroes in Overwatch, maybe some silhouettes are going to sort of like morph together. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's kind of, yeah, maybe a bit contentious. So why don't I think she's going to be very powerful in the meta? It's simply because she can't prevent damage. So her shout, which is her main mitigation ability. So this applies over health to Junker Queen. I believe it's 200 over health to Junker Queen. And also to your allies if they're near you. And it's quite a big area of effect. Also gives them a speed boost as well. Now, this decays away as of the last beta patch. So it's a nerf to Junker Queen on allies, not on Junker Queen herself. This is because if you think of... I like to use Tracer as a good example. Almost like Tracer is a baseline to a lot of balanced decisions in Overwatch. If you pop your Junker Queen shout next to Tracer and Tracer rushes into the enemy backline, that's a Tracer with a lot of health. Okay, it's only 200 temporary health on top of her existing health pool. That's a lot, and that's going to be very hard to deal with. So if she wants to go in there and assassinate the Zen or the Ana, she's damn well going to do that, and it's really powerful. So adding the decay element to it means that it's not as powerful, so those kind of tactics are not as strong as they used to be. The issue with Junker Queen, though, is what I like to refer to this as active mitigation. Now, you could say, well, Sty, surely her shout is active mitigation. It actively, on the press of a button, increases the health of allies, right? So if you can see someone's about to die and you shout, you give them 200 health, right? That's going to keep them alive. So in some senses, that's active. I guess what I mean, and to be a bit more sort of granular with this, is a way of preventing damage in your team or hitting your team. So obviously Reinhardt is the best example of this. He's got a big shield. He deploys that and he just eats damage. Sigma can throw a barrier at you. He can suck. And Winston has got a very nice barrier that he can drop down. So when we come away from Winston, Reinhardt, and Sigma, and we go to tanks without barriers, that's when it becomes very interesting. I think the best tank without a barrier right now is Doomfist. I think Doomfist is really, really powerful. Now, Doomfist has received some nerfs, so he's got his block doesn't absorb as much damage as it used to, but he can move faster when he's blocking now, which I think is a fair trade-off. But the big thing with Doomfist is in the recent beta, they actually made his charged up fist. So when he blocks, he gains charge. He's got a charge meter as he's blocking. When he's blocking damage, that empowers his fist. And the empowered fist would hit the first target, cause damage to that target, but then knock everyone else back. Now, though, it causes damage to all targets it hits in the sort of frontal conal AoE effect of the punch. This is really strong. So if you charge up a fist and then punch a bulk of enemy players and you punch them into a wall as well, you're doing incredible amounts of damage. Your team can just clean that up. It's really, really strong. Then we look at Junker Queen, as I say. And the Doomfist example, I think, works really well here because Doomfist, even though he doesn't have like an active mitigation ability for his team, it's made up by the fact he himself is very mobile and can set up kills with his knockback and his super punch. Now, you look at Junker Queen. Junker Queen can't really stop damage coming into a team, which I guess Doomfist can't really do that effectively, although he could stand in your face and block. Junker Queen, though, it's like she doesn't have the movement, and when she's not charging forward with her ultimate, it's very difficult to get her into good positions, and a lot of the time you can stand there, and actually you're quite susceptible as well to a lot of long-range pokes. So if the enemy have got like Soldier and Sojourn, you can probably forget playing Junker Queen because you're just going to get hit over and over again, and you can't really do anything to prevent that damage. Anyway, I want to move away from Junker Queen now because I think, like I said, she's a fantastic hero. She looks great. Her voice works great. It just looks amazing. Her animations are awesome. The way she plays is awesome. How she fits into the meta right now, I don't know. I think you'd have to probably put her down as a sort of lower tier tank if you were doing a tier list. Although I still think she can be fun because if the enemy team don't have an Ana and they're not willing to counter you on Junker Queen, you can just do whatever you like, and I think that's really, really strong. So what about these barrier tanks that I touched on? So yeah, I think a lot of people would be... I think people would agree with this. So the best tanks right now in Overwatch 2 as of the last beta, and in fact you can kind of see this if you watch Overwatch League where they're playing on one of the older beta patches, is you'll see Reinhardt, you'll see Winston, and you'll see Sigma. And it's simply because they can block damage and they can set up plays. All the other tanks find this really hard to do. Doomfist, okay, like I said, I think Doomfist will get better as time goes on, but remember they don't have the super Doomfist in Overwatch League right now with his super empowered punch. Heroes like Orisa, Ball, Junker Queen, Diva, Hog is like, just forget about Hog. I don't know why Hog is still in the tank category with his abilities. Like Hog basically doesn't tank. He's just like he just tanks with his sheer size. I don't know what's going on with Hog. Blizzard, please do something with Hog. But when you look at Orisa, you see again this sort of methodology or this ideology or whatever you want to call this design. I guess it's design ideology, right? That's methodology, I suppose, more than ideology. But she has got stuff to do all the time, and she feels great. Primary fire feels awesome. Throwing spears at people feels awesome. Feels even better. You throw them into a wall. Rushing at them with your spear spin because it makes you move faster and it deletes projectiles like D.Va feels great. Using Fortify to just take no damage feels amazing. Okay, you do take damage, but it's heavily reduced and you cannot be crit. Getting your ult off on the enemy team is awesome when it works because you can pull them out of position. You can get environmental kills with it. It feels great. But again, she suffers from, well, if the enemy team are just playing Anna, they're throwing nades at me. Uh-oh, that's not great. Although, you can eat the nade with Spear Spin. Or, the enemy team are playing a lot of long-range poke. They're maybe not playing, I don't know, flankers or something. You've got your Ashe and you've got your Sojourn just drilling into your enemy team, or your Sojourn and your Hanzo. Again, with the Orisa, you're a target, but it takes DPS about 5 seconds to realize we just won't shoot you. We'll just shoot other people. Whereas if it's a Sigma, if it's a Reinhardt, if it's a Winston, they are actively engaged, and this is the idea of active mitigation, in stopping the damage flow from the DPS into their team. Now, whether that's with Winston jumping on top of an enemy player, diving on them, maybe even dropping a barrier over them, or just being in their face. Winston's got mobility, Winston's got a nice barrier. Or whether it's Reinhardt protecting his team as they slowly push. Whether it's Reinhardt just in the enemy team smashing the crap out of them. That's also quite effective. But you know, let's get away from that. It's more to do with the barriers, right? The setup. Whether it's Sigma preventing a Widow angle while also using Suck and pushing forward. They can do so much, those heroes. And I think it's going to be really difficult for other heroes to find playtime. I look at Hammond and I look at... let's keep this to Hammond. Because Hammond... he's highly mobile and he can be really effective. But Hammond's playstyle is he's not with his team. I don't think there's any world where we see Hammond rolling with his team. Hammond is always going to be on the flanks looking to set up a sort of... well, he's looking to set up a dive, isn't he? But he doesn't really get much of a follow-through. It's like he goes through himself. Maybe he can isolate a target. Maybe he can get out. Maybe he can roll through the enemy team and then maybe he can get out. But he's not with your team. When you put the Hammond against the team with a Sigma or even a Reinhardt or... maybe not so much a Winston, but you could maybe throw the Winston in. But I think the Sigma's a better example. Suddenly, the Sigma's with the team. He's able to prevent tons of damage. He's putting out a lot of damage. Hammond is, well, he's just off doing whatever. So I think we might see a world where when we end up here with a Hammond or we end up with a... maybe even an Orisa to some extent. Or D.Va. D.Va fits into the same category as Hammond. Although she's got more mitigation with her defense matrix. I think those three tanks... maybe a Doomfist, but I think things will change with Doomfist. But those three tanks are, like, difficult to play with. The barrier tanks are not that difficult to play with as a team because you see them as the anchor point of the team. They are able to draw fire through blocking it with their barriers, through their presence and all that kind of stuff, whereas other heroes find that harder because either they're tanks that want to dive or they're just roadhog or don't even know why it's a tank. So if I was to sum up the situation with tanks in Overwatch 2, I would say, well, I'm not going to go over the heroes which I think are strong or weak because I just have done that, but when we look at the playstyle change, you're now the only tank. So this opens up a whole world of hurt if you do not counter the enemy tank. And I mean this in a big, big way. If you are playing a... I don't know, let's say you're playing... Let's say we're on Watchpoint Gibraltar and all you can play is Orisa and that's the only tank you play. Fair enough, you can play the Orisa. But you're going to give away so much ground because on the... Let's say you're defending on Watchpoint Gibraltar. Let's say you're defending on the high ground. As they're coming around the corner, the enemy team are able to chip your team with damage because you can't really stop the damage. But yeah, okay, you can output damage yourself and do that kind of stuff. But if you were a Sigma on the defense, well, you can prevent damage coming into your team. And you can kind of tank, right? And you can kind of hold that angle. Same for a Reinhardt. Can hold it. You've got an extra fire strike now with Reinhardt. So you've got a little bit more range damage potential or poke. Or even a Winston can drop the barrier, can counter dive if the enemy have got a dive tank. But we start falling into this sort of world of if you do not outplay the enemy tank, it becomes very obvious. And I mean really, really obvious. We've always spoke about Rein diff for years and years when it comes to Overwatch. And it's kind of easy to see that. And arguably, that's one of the greatest matchups in Overwatch, a Reinhardt mirror match, because you will get to see who is the alpha Rein, who out mind games the enemy Ryan, dropping barriers, bringing them up, trying to bait out earth shatters and stuff like that. It's really cool to see who can charge their shatter faster, who's got better charges, who can counter charge, and it is really cool to see that. And I will think we're going to see a lot of Reinhardt versus Reinhardt in Overwatch 2 because I think he's a really effective tank. And again, the changes they've done to him, while not overly flashy, and don't give him tons and tons of extra stuff to do, because he's only really got an extra fire strike and he can control his charge easier. Well, it's more controllable and he can cancel it as well. He's still the quintessential tank, and when played well, he's really, really good. But if you're playing into a D.Va and you are a Reinhardt or Zarya, I haven't even spoke about Zarya. I've completely forgot about Zarya, but Zarya is really effective as well. But D.Va Zarya has always been able to just destroy D.Va, and it's even more so the case now. If there is a Zarya and it's playing into a D.Va, the D.Va is going to get hammered. And I don't care what you say, the D.Va's just not going to be able to deal with that. So the D.Va would need to change to something that could deal with that. And what would deal with a Zarya? Well, you could mirror match it if you wanted to, or you could just go for Reinhardt, you could go for a Sigma. You know, it's some way of stopping her damage output, muting her bubble effectiveness. Those are the ways you need to play right now with Overwatch 2 when it comes to tanks. And it's still early days, and I think we're going to see a lot of changes with the meta, but I do think Overwatch 2 meta is going to be dictated a lot by the tanks, and I do think it's going to be very obvious when a tank is getting outplayed or you've got the wrong tank. And I'm worried that this might be a source of a lot of toxicity, because if your tank is, you know, I don't know, maybe you want to play dive, but your tank can only play Reinhardt. It's like, well, where's the dive? You know, we need a dive tank here. Well, he can't play Winston, he can't play Doomfist maybe, so you're kind of like, well, I guess we can't play dive then, and all these issues come from it. So the tanks really do dictate the way the game flows. But I do feel on the flip side of that, it does make tanking really fun. And if I was to compare the state of Overwatch tanks to Overwatch 2 tanks, I had so much more fun playing Overwatch 2 tanks than I did Overwatch 1 when it was going right. If it was not going right, it doesn't feel great. Tanks are always going to suffer from that. If you're out and your team are not pushing with you, if they don't want to move through chokes, if you're maybe not getting the healing you need or some other such stuff, or the enemy team are just focusing you down a lot, maybe you've been discorded by Zen, which is a whole other thing, and then you're just getting burnt down, it can maybe not feel the best. But I do think the majority of my tank games have felt really enjoyable, and you do get that sort of, it's like a tank rush where you're like, oh, I know I'm leading the charge here, I'm at the front, I've started the engagement, I'm doing tons of damage, I'm getting loads of work done, my team are following up with kills, and it feels awesome. So I think tanks probably are going to be the linchpin of Overwatch 2. Okay, let's move on to DPS. Okay. So DPS initially had a 10% movement speed passive, which made them run around like they were on steroids, which was awesome. If you played like Tracer, Genji, Soldier, anyone who could move, you felt amazing. It's like, oh my god, I can run around like mad. And I think this is where a lot of the feeling of Overwatch 2 is like Call of Duty, which again is a completely brainlet take. This game is not like Call of Duty. Have you played Call of Duty? Literally, you look at someone and they die. The time to kill in that game is approximately half a nanosecond, and then you're dead. Everyone dies dead quick. Everyone's got the same weapons. It's nothing like Call of Duty. So people saying that, again, are complete, absolute brainlets. Anyway, the DPS could move faster, but Blizzard decided, no, we are not going to allow that. We're going to change it to the DPS passive, which we've got now, which allows you to share ultimate charge between DPS heroes up to 30% of your ultimate points, like I discussed earlier in the video. Now, how do they play? Well, the main thing for DPS is you spend your time shooting other DPS, or you spend your time shooting tanks that are not blocking damage. You do not spend your time firing into two barriers. You're not sitting there going, oh, well, gee whiz, the enemy team is a Sigma, and, oh, it's also a Reinhardt. Because back in Overwatch 1, you'd have two tanks. I'm going to fire at a lot of barriers, and this is really crap, and I don't want to do this anymore. That doesn't happen. You are now firing at bodies. You are killing people. And again, you will get found out if you're not actually doing anything, because players will bring up the scoreboard and go, well, look at this. My soldier's done 1,000 damage. The enemy soldier has done 10,000 damage and has got 30 eliminations, and my soldier has got 3 eliminations. Something's going on. Now, it might not be soldier's fault in that case, and this, again, is going to be something we'll discuss in many future videos, I'm sure, because maybe the team has just collapsed. There'll be loads of issues. Maybe the soldier's not getting healed. Maybe the tanks have lost their mind. Who knows? Or the tank, sorry, has lost their mind. Who knows? But yeah, DPS is now more fun. Way more fun to play because you are actually shooting people. Which sounds kind of grim to say, but it is just more fun because of that. It also means that because of the 5v5 nature of the game, you do find yourself in more 1v1s. So if you've got a high 1v1 win rate, and actually the stats do show you this, because they will show you, I think it's called, I can't remember what it's called, but it's like, so I think it might be solo kills. So it's basically if you kill somebody from 100% health to 0 without nobody else damaging them, or nobody else, I think nobody else healing you as well, maybe. Then you've soloed them and you've killed them. And if you're more effective at that, then you will go through the ranks quickly. So again, this goes back to the whole thing of putting more agency on each individual player. When we talked about supports, you've got more chance to pop off. When you talk about tanks, you need to make plays, more chance to pop off. And also, you're just more beefier. Remember, all the tanks in Overwatch 2 are super buffed as well. Then you look at DPS, and again, because there's less players on the field, newer maps are bigger as well. There's more flank routes, all of that stuff. There's more opportunity to shoot the enemy, more opportunity to pop off. Now, throughout the entire history of Overwatch, DPS have always had the highest pop-off potential. We all remember the original, I remember the original Seagull clip where he's dragon blading people, and people are like, oh my god, this is insane. I think there was a clip on Temple of Anubis, wasn't it, where the map was finished in like 30 seconds or something. It's like, holy god, this is amazing. I even remember my first play of the game. It was Soldier 76. It was Tac Visor. It's terrible. I literally pressed the button, aim bot, and killed everyone. It was on King's Row Final Point. I can remember it as clear as day. That made me feel awesome. I popped off. Everyone remembers a Junkrat Riptire. Everyone remembers a Beyblade, or well, maybe you do remember the Beyblade meta, but even just a Reaper Death Blossom killing tons of people. These are moments you remember because they're awesome and you popped off and you killed the enemy team. They were always the case for DPS and Overwatch. Now in Overwatch 2, you get those moments still, but also the moment-to-moment gameplay, there's more emphasis on you popping off. And I've noticed that you see more play of the games where it's just people being killed. It's not like, here's a big ultimate. Yeah, sure, big ultimate play of the game still happen, but it would be, oh, look, here's an Ashe clicking on heads, or a Widow clicking on heads, or a soldier, or here's Tracer going on a mad mission killing 3 people. Like, or even Mei. I really like Mei. Mei's really good as well. Mei pops a few heads and it's like, oh my god, this is cool. Did I just say that? This is cool? Oh dear, I'll get my coat. You order the taxi, ladies and gentlemen. So I think DPS is in a good place. And I think I can be kind of cynical with this and say Overwatch needs to attract new players. It cannot build on its existing player base. And new players like flashy things, don't they? New players like to pop off. And maybe it's a little bit more zoomer to focus on giving DPS more agency and giving them more chance to pop off and making them, more fluid to play, because that's going to making them more fluid to play through having less tanks on the enemy team gives them more options to shoot people. Maybe that'll attract more players, and maybe that's a design decision Blizzard have made. But I do think the knock-on of that is it does make the game more fun for DPS. A lot of people have been saying, like, hey, it feels more deathmatchy. And I think, and I've said this as well, I think what it is, yeah, it does feel more deathmatchy, but it's because you're shooting enemy players. It's not because you're firing into barriers. So, yeah, I think DPS are in a much better place than they were in Overwatch 1 by far. So what about push? Okay, oh, I don't know. I don't like push. So, okay, saying I don't like it is a strong statement. It's fine, but it is weird. Now, I have watched a ton of Overwatch League, and I hate it when the push maps come up because it is 10 minutes of just nothing. And then it always comes down to the final fight, and it's boring. And I hate the fact that they've got a game mode in the game which is almost built around not having that many fights. If you control the bot, then you just kind of don't want to push it. Maybe you want to keep it where it is, take a couple of fights. Maybe you want to stop, well, like I said, you want to start pushing towards the end of the game, basically, so the enemy team have got no way of winning a fight and pushing it back. There's been a lot of figures thrown around with, like, once you get to 80, 70 meters, maybe even 65 meters, the game's basically over, because it's very difficult then to undo that push and then win multiple fights to then take the lead, because the enemy team will probably win fights in between that because they'll start getting ultimates coming online. So I'm not really sure where to place this mode. I still think Blizzard are working on it in terms of balance and flow. They did increase the time limit of the game mode. It's now 10 minutes. It never used to be 10 minutes. So this is a chance, or I guess an opportunity for more fights to take place. But I still don't think it solves the core issue of it's a game mode where you kind of don't want to take fights. It's really weird. So I don't know about push, and I actually would like to see what you guys think about this. What I will say about Push is the maps, bar New Queen Street, are phenomenal. New Queen Street, actually, no, I'm being harsh on New Queen Street. I think New Queen Street plays okay. It just looks dated. It looks like an old Overwatch map, and I think it's because it is. It's definitely something from 2018 onwards, whereas you look at Colosseo, and you're like, oh my lord, that is something that is a modern Overwatch map, and it looks awesome. Okay, it's got some issues with high ground contesting. Go on the little bridges, you can just sort of contest the bot, and it gets really dodgy when it happens. It happened in Overwatch League recently, and it was not great. Even Midtown, which is not even a push map, but that looks great as well. So yeah, like a Monte Carlo or Monte Casino, or whatever the hell. I forgot the name of the map. Monte Carlo. It's not Monte Carlo, is it? What do they call it? I want to say Casino Royale, but it's not that. Well, you know what I'm talking about. The F1 map. It is in Monte Carlo. Even that's a nice looking map to play on as well. So yeah, I want you guys to let me know what you think about Push, because I think it's probably my least favorite game mode. Okay, 5v5. Oh my god. Okay, this is going to cause some problems, because so I'm going to just come out and say this. I think 5v5 is great for the game, but I also think 6v6 could have probably been fixed. But now I've played 5v5, I am fully sold on 5v5 being great for the game. 6v6, the way you would fix that would be reducing the power level of tanks, because you don't want loads of barriers, you don't want super tanks, right? The issue with that is the tank players would then feel kind of crap, because they'd be playing weak heroes. That would depend on tank synergy. But maybe that was a positive for the game. In 5v5 though, what they're doing is going, right, let's get rid of a tank and let's just have one tank. So we solve the double barrier crap that's plagued the game for years and has been highly damaging to the game at both professional and just public perception level of the game. And we'll just have one tank. And what we'll do, because we've only got one tank now, is we'll make the tank itself more survivable, and it will do more damage. So you're killing two birds with one stone there, and I think that is the masterstroke of 5v5. Now, there's also negatives to this, right? So like I said earlier in the video, this means that your tank is got a ton of pressure on them. If they're not playing well, if they're getting countered, then you lose, and it feels terrible. But when they're winning, and you're the tank, it feels great. You can make plays more. It feels much better. Now, the other elephant in the room is 6v6. There may have been groups of people playing in a 6-stack. You can't play in a 6-stack anymore. That's it. That's the end of it. The game, it's gone. There might be arcade modes that pop up where it's 6v6. You could make a custom game, but then you'd need to find 6 other players. I don't think it's going to happen, and I think Blizzard know deep down. Well, it's not deep down. They've got the statistics to back this up. They'll know that people generally do not play in a 6-stack. People don't play in a 5-stack. People probably duo more than anything. Maybe there's a triple. But you're not going to get a full team. It's very rare that happens. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, because I know there's going to be you guys in the comments going, shut up, Sty. We always play together. And there will be people like that. And I do feel for you, because obviously you just need to kick somebody out of your friend group, which is not great. It's like, sorry, who was that off-tank player? Yeah, you're gone. You no longer get to play the game. Goodbye. Which isn't nice. But I do think 5v5 has other implications as well. So it should, in theory, reduce queue times. Now, before you go in on me and go, well, queue times, they were horrendous for tanks in the beta. It was like 10 minutes plus, but supports and DPS were like 2 minutes, 1 minute, instant queues. What the hell's going on? Now, the reason why it should increase, or reduce, sorry, the queue time for all roles is because it increases the number of possible games. So for every 10 games, you will have 10 extra players in theory. Right, now I know it doesn't totally work out like this, but if you go from 6v6 to 5v5, you're only trying to match 10 players together. You're not trying to match 12 together. So as 10 games, actually as 5 games go by, I should say, you'll then get 10 extra players, which you can then, in theory, put them together in their own game. And so I know this depends on the roles they're queuing for, and if everyone's queuing for tank, then it's not going to sort it out. But there is a positive effect that it can have on the queue times. But we'll only really know this when the game launches and it's free to play and everyone can just download it and play it, because in the beta you still had to pay for access and the populations wouldn't be that big. So you're always going to have, it's always going to be hard to tell what the queue times would be. But 5v5, to wrap it up, I think is positive for the game. It allows each role to have more pop-off potential. It, I think, allows Blizzard to balance the game easier. Now, This is because they clearly had no idea, or they simply didn't want to, because of the ramifications of it, remove double barrier from Overwatch. Now they don't have to worry about that. So it's one less hero to kind of throw into the mix of team balance, because now it can be quite, well, a little bit easier to balance the tanks because you've only got one on a team. There's not two. And I think it was a common misconception in the past where players thought that tanks maybe didn't do a lot of damage, and they did. Tanks in Overwatch 1 did a hell of a lot of damage. There would be second or top DPS a lot of the time if they were played well. Especially Divas could do tons and tons of damage because it affected, or even Hog could do tons of damage because they were just like an extra DPS that could take a load of damage. Or a Sigma, you know, can do everything basically. He's doing damage and he's protecting his team and he's just doing everything. Tons and tons of damage output. So I do think 5v5 is good for the game. Okay, let's wrap this up then, because I feel like I've been quite positive on what we've played with what we are presuming is the final Overwatch 2 beta. I don't think it's a lost cause. Now, there are obviously problems, and the problems I think stem from the messaging around the game, and that's because people are really confused as to what this game is still. When you look at the Overwatch 2 betas, they look like Overwatch just with new maps and 2 new heroes and 1 less player. That's all it looks like. Yeah, okay, there's a bunch of balance changes. There's hero reworks. You've got your Sombra, your Orisa, your Doomfist, etc. Your Symmetra kind of mini rework, your Moira mini rework, I guess we could call it. Or maybe not really a mini rework, because it's more of a... It's less mini than the Symmetra one, which isn't really anything. They've just changed some stats, whatever. But the messaging issue still remains. And I think this is because Blizzard were treating the betas as actual betas. They were looking for feedback. They were not marketing events. Now, there was some crossover, obviously, with the very first beta being this massive event on Twitch. Millions of viewers and everybody piling in like, oh my god, this is going to be huge. And then actually, it's like, no, this is just a technical beta. It was literally a little bit more content than what was in the alpha, which was a tech alpha, which is what I was playing prior to the beta. So there wasn't that much more content, and people were like, what? There's nothing going on here. This is a scam. Again, that's mixed messages, because what Blizzard wanted to do is run a test, but also they promoted it. And we've had no Overwatch content, and suddenly we got loads of Overwatch, or, you know, what we thought was going to be loads of Overwatch 2 new content. Everyone flocked to the game. Then we fast forward to the second beta, and this one you could not get access to with Twitch drops. Instead, you either could sign up and you would get access on the 14th of July, or you could just buy it for $40. So obviously this was them, or 40 quid or whatever it is in your region. This was them trying to make money off the game for the first time in a very long time by selling beta access, which, you know, some people are like, well, this is kind of scummy. You had a bunch of additional currency given to you as well, which at the time of the launch of the Watchpoint pack, nobody knew what this was actually worth, but they did clear it up a couple of days later. So at least you know you've got some sort of premium currency and what it can do. I think it can buy you 2 battle passes, and you also get the first battle pass included, and that kind of stuff when Overwatch 2 finally launches. But it's this mixed messaging problem, and Blizzard are the only ones that can fix this. And I would hope that come the launch of this game, or at least the lead up to the launch of Overwatch 2 PvP, there is an onslaught of animated shorts, of all kinds of associated stuff that Blizzard generally do around a game launch. Now, the other issue is Overwatch 2, in my head, is the PvE, not what we've got right now. And PvE is not coming out until next year. So when PvE finally turns up, you can then argue, well, wow, this is Overwatch 2. Because imagine if we were in a world where October the 4th, we've got all of these PvP updates, but oh my god, we've got this massive PvE campaign, and we've got all this PvE stuff in it. You'd be like, holy shit, this is a brand new game, there's loads of stuff. But we're not going to get that, and it's going to be a slow burn. So when the game launches in October, it's like, calling it a launch is kind of not right. It is, because it is the launch of Overwatch 2 in a lot of ways. But it's just a recommitment to updating Overwatch and going, look, we're going to start adding heroes to this, we're going to start adding maps, game modes, and then we've got these new cosmetics. And we're going to support this with a free-to-play model with a battle pass. And then next year, we'll give you PvE, and however they give you that, whether they do that through seasonal downloads of, like, you download a mission pack, and then the next mission pack comes out a few months later, or they tie it into the battle pass, or they sell it you as a box. Who knows? And I guess we'll find out next year at some point. But I want to end this video on trying to be positive with Overwatch 2. And I think I've been overly positive as well throughout this video. What I played in both betas, I really enjoyed. I get the feedback that it but it looks the same as Overwatch. And that's something Blizzard need to rectify and sort out if they want to attract new players. I'm cautiously optimistic for the future. What I like to say when people ask me about Overwatch 2, how do I feel about it? I say, well, ask me in a year. So if you come back and ask me in a year's time and go, well, how is Overwatch 2 now? Well, then I'd be able to more easily explain how it was and what Blizzard were able to do. Because there's still a massive shadow looming over Blizzard. Can they actually update this game as often as they said they could in the roadmap? If they can't, then they'll start to lose even more face, and it'll be even more difficult for them to build back. Because what they need to do now is to start building back this game. Winning back fans, showing they are supporting the game, winning over the community again, because the community for this game is massive. And then they go from there. Okay, guys, this has been a hell of a long video. And as I said at the top of the video, I threw my script away. I literally wrote like a 4-page script for this video. And when I say script, it's a lot of like bullet points, talking points. And I just thought, no, I'm just going to give it you guys how I feel. And then you guys can just react to it as well. So I hope you've enjoyed this one. It's been a long one. I hope you've just sat back, chilled, relaxed. And yeah, do let me know what you think about this in the comments below, though. Do you think Overwatch 2 is going to succeed? Do you think Blizzard are on the right track for that? Oh, hell, what do you think Microsoft will do to Overwatch 2? Anyway, all right, guys, thank you for watching the video. I've been Stylosa. You can follow me on everything, which is at Stylosa. On TikTok, it is at StylosaUL. And I will catch you lovely, lovely lot on the next video. See you soon.